Alex simply says to do it, no matter what state they're in. As Krat turns to give the order, he notices everyone crying. The soldiers were moved because in this world, it wasn't common for a noble to care about their servants. Seeing how they acted, they swore they would protect his life and he cost. Krat noticed everyone's expressions had changed. At least the boy had won bit of their hearts. Sometime later, Krat approaches our boy. He says that they're ready to leave and are just waiting for the signal. Krat notices that they're looking at him differently. Seeing their determination, he knew. This wasn't the time to feel guilty. He needed to give everyone hope for the future. He then praised everyone's performance in the battle against the Sasquatches. Now they would head to their destination as quickly as possible. However, they wouldn't neglect or abandon anyone who was injured. The men shout that they understand and then we see what happened an hour ago. Layla was approaching when a Sasquatch lunged at her. Strong as always, she dodges it but hadn't expected them to notice her so quickly. She throws a dagger attached to a rope and leaps to the other side, dodging the Sasquatch's attack and climbing it onto a branch. With that, she blocks the path and jumps back down to the ground. What she turns around and the beast comes at her suddenly smashes face first into a trap. With it immobilized, all she had to do was finish it off. But the monster keeps moving and even grabs a tree pulling out of the ground. She hadn't expected that. The giant comes in for a crushing hug but she easily dodges it. Sliding to the side, she starts wrapping the rope around its neck. Before the beast realizes it, it's already being strangled. Somehow, she had managed to make it work. She couldn't think it would be possible for this ape to break through those monster tendons. Besides, the ropes were too thin for it to grab with its hands. Then she notices that even more strangled is still knocking over trees. She's a bit shocked and decides she needs to finish this quickly. According to what Calix said, all she had to do was inject the venom straight into its bloodstream. Once again, the ape comes in for a smash, but she dodges and slips behind it. She pulls out a needle and drives it right into the monster's nape. She had done everything he told her to, but she wasn't sure it would actually work. Now her only option was to pray that it worked. The ape, however, doesn't seem to be calming down and keeps thrashing until the trees shatter. Then she realizes the venom isn't working as well as expected. Or rather, is working because the ape's eyes roll back and it crashes face first to the ground. She's impressed that it actually worked. As much as she didn't want to admit that blonde brat knew more about poison than she did. But it's very strange because he changed so much overnight. She's been watching him up close for over a year now. If suddenly, he seems like a completely different person. At least she hopes it's for the better. After all, she never thought she'd get the chance to get revenge again. But maybe now it's possible. Back on the wagons, Calix glances back. Some soldiers who survived are still exhausted and beaten up. He tells Krat that they're going to stop here and Krat says he understands. As the soldiers sit around the trees, Calix approaches and offers them some potions. They hesitate because those are very expensive. But our boy just tosses the bottles to them and tells them to drink up already. That's when someone comes up behind him and asks what he's doing. Calix already knew someone would complain about this. Krat tells him that even a low-ranked potion is extremely expensive. These ones, Russell had prepared specifically for him. After all, 10 bottles like these cost half the reserves of their house. Angrily, Calix asks if he's telling him to let everyone suffer while these potions just sit there. Krat looks uncomfortable and says that's not exactly what he meant. Everyone watches and our boy tells them not to worry. When the expedition is over, they'll have enough money to buy as many potions as they want. At that moment, both of them are surprised again. The soldiers bow, thanking the Lord for his generosity. The clueless Calix is at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Krat notices that now those soldiers have truly decided to give their lives for him. Our boy tells him to wipe the dumb smile off his face and get ready to move out. As soon as he gets on the wagon, the system of screen pops up, showing that the support percentage had increased to 18%. He smiles and tells them to move forward. The wagons continue advancing through the forest. Sometime later, someone shouts for them to stop. Krat asks what's wrong in Calyx since they arrived at the destination. Krat looks confused because he doesn't see any secret vault. Not to mention there's no one guarding the area. What kind of place is this? Calyx asks if Layla has sent a message, and Krat says no. With that, they just decide to set up camp there for now. Until further orders, they would stay put. A while later, inside a tent, Calyx points to a region on the map and says that the Hoshran family vault is right there. Krat asks if he's not way off and our boy says no. At that moment, Krat yells in his face, saying that based on the map, it would take at least a week to get there. The soldiers were already getting exhausted after being away from home for so long. And if they told them they had to march for another week, half would probably give up. Thomas also says that staying in one place for too long is dangerous because they'd be found soon. Calyx lazily tells them to listen before they start complaining. He just pointed to the vault's location. He never said they were going there. Krat comes to ask if the objective of the expedition isn't to steal the vault. Calyx walks to a corner of the tent and says they'll access it from there. He starts stomping on the ground, searching for something until he steps on the lever. Suddenly, the ground begins to rise and a stone appears in front of him. The men look completely confused as he starts fiddling with some kind of puzzle. Suddenly, the stone sinks back into the ground, feeling an entrance. As soon as the blonde boy steps forward to follow the path, the men grab him saying it could be a dangerous trap. Our boy says he highly doubts that. Krat then admits he's confused and wants to know how Calyx has information about this place. Calyx says that when he knows comes from a reliable source. Considering he's been somewhat incompetent so far, he knows it's hard for them to believe him. But soon, they'll see for themselves. Krat looks a bit embarrassed and Thomas steps in saying he believes in their leader. A leader who valued even the weakest of his soldiers with someone he could place his trust in. The other soldiers alongside them also say they'd leave in him. If they follow this path and die anyway, it would be an honor. Krat gets emotional and our boy tells them to stop trusting him because he's still weak and can't even use mana properly. They were idiots to trust their lives to someone like him. Thomas smiles and let me tell you. The smiles in this story are dark. I always feel like these guys have some sinister intention. Thomas then says that strength isn't always physical. Our boy tells Krat to stop crying and turns to everyone, saying it's time to go. With that, the army begins descending the stairs. Meanwhile, Calyx looks out from the tent, hoping everything went well with Layla. Back with everyone's favorite assassin, Layla is collecting monkey blood. She wipes her face, saying she has enough. Standing in front of the cave, she says it's time for some fun. She starts striking two pieces of wood together to start a fire. In the next scene, she's jumping from branch to branch and from afar, you can see the fire she caused. With that, all the Sasquatches in the area should be drawn to it. The problem, however, was something else. Some hooded guys, whose insignias looked eerily familiar, were passing through the area and saw some bodies on the ground. Layla already knew these cockroaches would show up. She puts her hand on her dagger, saying she's going to finish this. She'd show them what happens when you turn your back on someone with a position of an executioner. One of the men on the ground starts writing on a paper, saying they're in an emergency. They have found a Sasquatch's body and there was no one wounded nearby. That meant someone capable of fighting a creature like that was in the area. And in this entire region, there was only one family capable of something like that. He needed to inform the Viscount immediately. Layla is quietly observing from a distance. She sees how they're sealing the letters and knows they're scouts. At that, she analyzes the direction of the wind. She takes some of the blood at her pocket and smears it on the tree next to her. Once again, another guy is sealing a letter and she's watching from the tree above. The scene shifts to the Sasquatches arriving at the fire. They don't want to enter the cave, but suddenly, one of them stops and sniffs the air. All of them begin roaring and change direction. One of the scouts carrying the letter is leaping from branch to branch. Thinking he needs to deliver the information as quickly as possible. He stops on a branch to check the path ahead and takes a dagger straight to the chest. He looks down, sees the blade, and when he turns to look behind him, he's kicked to the ground. Man, he falls like a piece of trash. Layla approaches the body, grabs the letter, and realizes it's important to inform the prince about this. She immediately starts running. Meanwhile, the Sasquatches are wandering through the forest, following the scent of blood. At the same time, the group continues advancing through the tunnel. Alex knows that this place was built by a wizard who had retired to conduct experiments, so it wouldn't make sense for that person to mix up a bunch of traps in their own house. Krat argues that it's for ensuring the person's safety. However, our boy places his hand on the wall and says there are no traces of digging. The stairs, too, were crafted using magic. To have that kind of power, the person would have to be at least an 8th class archmage, which means if this person really